Picture this. It's Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2025. Donald Trump stands at the podium, hand over heart, and declares he's going to stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. The crowd goes wild. Executive order signed. Mission accomplished, right? Well, buckle up, because what happened next is exactly why you need to stay subscribed to this channel. Here's what Trump actually said in that executive order. Government censorship of speech is intolerable in a free society. He accused the Biden administration of trampling free speech rights, of pressuring social media companies to censor Americans. The order proclaimed it was America's policy to secure the right of people to speak freely without government interference. Beautiful words. Frame-worthy, even. But here's the thing about campaign promises versus governing reality. Sometimes they age about as well as milk left out in the Arizona sun. Fast forward 9 months. Not even a full year. And Trump himself admits at a White House event that his administration took freedom of speech away. Yes, you heard that right. The man who promised to restore free speech openly admitted his administration removed it. He was trying to justify jailing people for burning the American flag, despite the Supreme Court explicitly protecting flag burning as free speech back in 1989. You cannot make this up. But wait, it gets juicier. Remember when conservatives were all fired up about cancel culture? About government overreach? About protecting free speech on college campuses? Well, plot twist. The Trump administration has been accused by a Reagan-appointed judge of conducting a full-throated assault on the First Amendment. A Reagan judge. Let that sink in. Let's talk about what's actually been happening on the ground, because the receipts are piling up faster than parking tickets in New York City. In March, immigration agents arrested a lawful permanent resident named Mahmoud Khalil. His crime? Being a prominent figure in Columbia University protests about the Israel-Hamas war. The administration claimed his presence would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences. Translation: they didn't like what he was saying, so they went after him. 18 scholars, spanning the political spectrum from liberal to conservative, had to issue a statement reminding everyone that the First Amendment protects speech many of us find deeply offensive. Then there's the college campus situation. Trump signed an executive order essentially threatening universities. Crack down on campus speech we don't like, or lose your federal funding. Remember, when conservatives said universities were supposed to be bastions of free speech and open debate? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Now the administration is literally using financial pressure to control what students can say on campus. The irony is so thick, you could cut it with a knife. But here's where things get really wild. Enter Brendan Carr, Trump's FCC chairman, and the Jimmy Kimmel saga. After the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk in September 2025, Kimmel made comments on his show criticizing how the MAGA movement was handling the narrative around the shooter. Within hours, Carr appears on a conservative podcast and says, and this is a direct reference to the situation, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to take action on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead. Two major ABC affiliate owners, Nexstar and Sinclair, immediately announced they're pulling Kimmel's show. Coincidentally, both companies have major business deals that need FCC approval. Nexstar is pursuing a $6.2 billion merger that requires the Trump administration's blessing. Within hours, ABC suspends Jimmy Kimmel indefinitely. A late-night comedian, off the air, because the head of a federal agency didn't like what he said. Even Ted Cruz, not exactly known as a bleeding-heart liberal, called Carr's tactics dangerous as hell and compared them to a mafia boss saying, "Nice bar you have here, would be a shame if something happened to it." The fallout was immediate. The ACLU issued a blistering statement saying Trump officials are repeatedly abusing their power to stop ideas they don't like. Former President Barack Obama, who usually stays above the fray, felt compelled to weigh in, saying the administration has taken cancel culture to a new and dangerous level by threatening regulatory action against media companies. This is precisely the kind of government coercion the First Amendment was designed to prevent, Obama wrote. When you've got everyone from the ACLU to Ted Cruz on the same side of an issue, you know something's seriously wrong. And it's not just Kimmel. Attorney General Pam Bondi vowed to step up efforts targeting hate speech, a term so vague it gives the government vast latitude to go after basically anyone for basically anything. The Deputy Attorney General talked about investigating people who heckled Trump at a restaurant. Let me repeat that. Federal investigation for heckling. The Trump administration revoked visas of foreign visitors because of their online comments about Charlie Kirk. They're literally punishing speech at the border. Here's what makes this whole situation so mind-bendingly hypocritical. During Trump's first term and on the campaign trail, conservatives spent years screaming about big tech censorship, about Twitter fact-checking being oppression, about Facebook supposedly silencing conservative voices. The entire MAGA movement built itself on the foundation of being anti-censorship warriors. Trump even sued social media companies claiming they were violating free speech, even though the First Amendment only applies to government action, not private companies. But now, when they're actually in power, when they actually control government agencies that can genuinely threaten free speech, suddenly all those principles go out the window faster than your New Year's resolutions. The Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank that's definitely not some liberal organization, analyzed what's happening and concluded the administration signals a crackdown directed against speech by one side in the national discussion, Trump's political adversaries. One legal expert, George Washington law professor Mary Ann Franks, put it bluntly. Trump is waging an all-out assault against free speech, using the power of government to dictate what Americans can say, think, write, study, and believe. Think about the double standard for a second. After Politico reported that young Republicans expressed racist, misogynistic, and anti-Semitic sentiments in private chats, Vice President J.D. Vance excused it as just edgy chat from young activists. Boys will be boys, apparently. But when people posted comments Vance didn't like about Charlie Kirk, suddenly he's urging Americans to call their employers and get them fired. The same crowd that spent years complaining about cancel culture is now weaponizing it with the full force of government backing. Here's what's really at stake. The First Amendment isn't just some abstract legal concept. It's not about protecting popular speech that everyone agrees with, because that speech doesn't need protection. It's specifically designed to protect unpopular speech, offensive speech, speech that makes us uncomfortable. That's the entire point. As those 18 scholars wrote, the First Amendment protects speech many of us find wrong-headed or deeply offensive. Always has, always should. But we're watching in real time as that principle gets shredded. When a federal agency chairman can threaten broadcasters into silence, when universities face funding cuts for allowing protests, when lawful residents get deported for their political views, when foreign visitors lose visas over social media posts, we're not talking about protecting free speech. We're talking about the opposite. We're talking about using government power to control speech, which is literally the definition of censorship. The White House, when asked about all this, claims Trump is leading the most transparent administration in history and regularly takes questions from the media. But transparency and free speech aren't the same thing. You can answer questions while simultaneously threatening anyone who asks the wrong ones. That's not freedom. That's performance art. What makes this situation even more absurd is Trump's own words. In his March speech to Congress, he claimed he stopped all government censorship and brought back free speech in America. It's back, he declared. But actions speak infinitely louder than words, and the actions tell a completely different story. When judges are calling your policies an assault on the First Amendment, when your own party members are comparing your FCC chairman to a mob boss, when civil liberties organizations across the political spectrum are sounding alarms, maybe, just maybe, you haven't actually brought back free speech. The Kimmel situation is particularly revealing because of how quickly it escalated and how transparent the pressure campaign was. Carr makes his threats on a podcast. Within hours, affiliate stations pull the show. ABC caves immediately. The message to every other broadcaster, every other comedian, every other media outlet is crystal clear. Criticize this administration and face consequences. That's not free speech. That's intimidation with a government stamp of approval. And here's the kicker. After massive public backlash, after Ted Cruz and Rand Paul spoke out, After over 1.7 million people canceled their Disney Plus subscriptions in protest, ABC brought Kimmel back a week later. His return episode hit a 10-year ratings high. The American public, regardless of political affiliation, doesn't want government officials threatening entertainers into silence. But the damage was done. Every media company, every broadcaster, every comedian now knows exactly what can happen if they cross the line that this administration draws. Look, reasonable people can disagree about what Charlie Kirk's legacy should be, about campus protests, about what constitutes appropriate speech in the wake of tragedy. Those are legitimate debates. But what's not debatable is this. Using federal regulatory power to punish speech you don't like is textbook government censorship. It's exactly what Trump claimed he was fighting against. It's the very thing his executive order was supposedly designed to prevent. The United States has traditionally stood apart from much of the world on free speech issues. European countries will jail people over Facebook posts. Other democracies have hate speech laws that criminalize offensive expression. America's First Amendment protections have always been more robust, more protective of even disturbing speech. That's been our tradition, our strength, what makes us different. But when Trump and J.D. Vance lecture European countries about free speech while simultaneously trying to clamp down on dissent at home, the hypocrisy is so obvious it's almost impressive in its shamelessness. So, where does this leave us? 9 months into Trump's second term, and the gap between his free speech promises and his free speech actions is wider than the Grand Canyon. The administration that swore it would end government censorship is being accused of weaponizing government power against speech it dislikes. The president who claimed he'd restore free speech is openly admitting his administration took it away. The movement that built itself on opposing cancel culture is canceling with the full force of federal authority behind it. This isn't about left versus right. This isn't about whether you like Trump or hate him, whether you think Kimmel was out of line or perfectly justified. This is about fundamental principles that are supposed to transcend politics. Free speech means protecting speech you hate. Government power should never be used to silence critics. These aren't radical ideas. They're literally the foundation of American democracy. But here we are, watching those foundations get tested in real time. Every time an administration official threatens a broadcaster, every time a comedian gets pulled off air after federal pressure, every time someone faces deportation or investigation for their political views, we move a little further from those principles. And the most frustrating part? The people doing this genuinely seem to believe they're the ones protecting freedom. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. Trump supporters cheered when he signed that executive order about ending censorship. They celebrated when he railed against big tech suppression. But now when the administration uses actual government power, the kind that can actually violate the First Amendment, suddenly it's justified, suddenly it's necessary, suddenly those principles don't apply. You can't have it both ways. Either you support free speech or you don't. Either you oppose government censorship or you don't. Pick a lane. Make sure you're subscribed to USA Political Insider because we're going to keep tracking every development in this story. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video where we'll be breaking down the latest developments in the Senate Commerce Committee's investigation into Brendan Carr's role in the Kimmel situation. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think the Trump administration is living up to its free speech promises, or is this the biggest bait and switch in recent political history? Let's debate in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay informed, stay critical, and remember, in politics, always watch what they do, not what they say.